right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Get a Grip with Kendall. I'm your host, Kendall Roosing, and here today we are joined by none other than Ashley Manso. Now, I'm going to try not to make this episode too hectic, but for those of you guys, good luck. For those of you guys who don't know, Ashley is not only a dear friend of mine, she's also a purple belt at our Jiu-Jitsu academies, but she's been my strength and conditioning coach for many, many years, and we've just developed like an amazing, beautiful friendship. But at the same time, like, she just has so much knowledge around like holistic health and how to integrate like health and wellness with your daily life, either whether you're an athlete, a mom, I wasn't say like a high school athlete or a teacher, whatever. Like, she'll tell more about her stuff and it'll sound way better coming from her. But the main thing that I want to say is that she can talk about so many topics. Like, I'm going to have to try to narrow it down to what we talk about today. But I'm so excited to have her here because she's my dear friend and I get to like glean so much of her expertise as a result of that. And we share like a lot of beautiful friendship and information with each other and experience. But I get to interview her and share some of that with you guys, which is so fun for me. She's also, as a side note, I brought her in multiple times to my Jiu-Jitsu Accelerator students and the programs that I do online to share her expertise with my students. So if it goes like that, just goes to show that she really is the real deal because I will pay her to talk to the people who pay me. So you know that like being friends is one thing, but when you're investing in their services, you really think that they know their shit, and it's true. So that's a different introduction that I've probably given for anybody before. Yeah. But welcome. Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited.
I love that I'm here.
I love that you're here too. And it was so cute because earlier today she was like, "Oh, I listened to your podcast. I really like the Q&A one." And I was like, "You listen to my podcast? I forget that I have a podcast."
Undoubtedly, yes. And if you haven't watched the Q&A one, please watch it.
I'm like, I know you're here to film an episode of my podcast, but sometimes I forget I have a real podcast.
Yeah.
Because most of my episodes are just hanging out talking with my friends.
Well, yeah.
So it's good. So, okay.
Isn't that what all good podcasts are?
You're crazy. Those are the ones I listen to for sure.
Me too.
Or like the nerdy ones that talk about things I have no idea about.
No, yeah.
Those are good.
That's what I'm here for.
So yes, that is why you're here. Okay, so we're going to dive right in and I'm going to try to ask a lot of questions in a short period of time because we may need a part 2 because there's so much we could talk about. But what we're going to first go over is a question I ask everybody as we get started on the show. And big deep breath. I like that. I love that big deep breath. And we caught it. We got it all on camera. We got a lot of like pre-roll stuff on camera too that should not be public. So what does it mean to you to have a grip on your life? What does that feel like, look like, smell like?
Well, it smells like top premium cannabis. That is what it smells like. But what it feels like to have a grip on my life is to be soft. When I'm being soft, where it's hard to be soft as an athlete and it's hard to be soft as a business owner, to be soft on how I get a grip of my life is what works for me. That is what keeps me gripped onto life, is being soft or softer, being softer.
And man, I already know we're going to talk about masculine and feminine energy pretty soon here. But I will say, like, the question I have to follow up with that is, would you equate or relate the word soft to surrender, or would you relate it to a different word? Or are they different for you?
Allowing. Because surrender means what it could mean to anybody. To me, what surrender means would be giving up a little bit of control, which is okay. I'm happy to do that, right? But rendering control and surrendering control are a little bit different. So for me, being softer, to me, when it comes to athletics, when it comes to training my clients, when it comes to running a business, would ultimately mean I guess allowing. So opening myself up to receive, which quite frankly is an art form.
That is so beautiful and something that I'm working on all the time, as you know.
Me too.
Okay, great. So yes, I love it. So I'm already so excited about this episode. Okay, so next question. I'm thinking back to the intro that I gave you, and I literally found myself stumbling over my words, which everyone heard, and I'm not going to edit it out.
No.
Of like trying to explain what you know, who you are, and what you do, which is so multifaceted. So I'm really excited because there's just so much there. Yeah. So I'm really excited to ask you the next question that I know that it's funny because I always do the 10-minute version of your life story, or 7 or 8 minutes or whatever it ends up being. We do that. And I remember asking you about it earlier this afternoon, and it's like, well, which direction do we go in? Because it is so multifaceted.
Sometimes I don't even know.
So as we dive into that, you guys listening or watching will understand a little bit about why I stumbled over my words in the beginning, because there are a lot of directions that Ashley goes in. And so there's a little bit of something for everybody. And at least that's definitely how I feel like I relate to you. So let's go into the question. Let's hear your short version of your life story.
So the short version of my life story that isn't a 24-hour conversation or more is, well, what all can you do in 36 years? And 36 years doesn't really say too much because I was born 36 years ago. So my life really started to pivot at the age of 25 because I was trying so hard to become a professional athlete. And I spent about a year as a free agent without success, post-collegiate, and doing things in a semi-pro circuit, just not having a home, just not having a talent, having a college background, and then not having a home.
Can you tell them what sport you did?
Oh, yeah. So sorry. I've been doing jiu-jitsu so long. You write these things out. So I did run track professionally. And I ran
sprinter.
Yeah, sprint. Yeah, not that long distance shit. Y'all can have all that. That's fine. But I ran the 400 meters professionally. I ran part of an elite group for Team USA and did a bunch of international circuits for the IIF. And anywho,
what's the IIF?
International Athletics Federation.
Okay, great. I know something.
You've learned something, right? So, and no matter what, I was not that. I guess this is a better part of a life story. I was never that type of athlete that was just high school, good grades. Good grades get you to college. You get good grades in college, you run real fast, you become professional. That was just not my route. That was not my route. I was super nerdy in the weirdest way in high school, like AP physics, but could not do well in language arts. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because see, that's the path that is laid out for you as a student athlete. And we kind of are only taught that there is one route. And honestly, that was my route. Like I was comfortable in that route. That was good for me. But I honestly didn't have very many friends who were outside of that. So I'm really interested in hearing more about how that went for you.
Oh, well, and being a first generation Cuban American, your parents, not saying generationally or culturally that any of that has to factor into your future. But for me, it just meant enough to be involved with something, to be good at something, to participate in something, and just to prove you have discipline, that you have accountability. I had to work at a really young age, so getting to track and field practice in between school and work and all that, I just learned discipline for sports in a different kind of way through having every bit of resource and need successfully handed to you by your parents who struggled here, So for me, part of my story comes with a lot of hard work and discipline, but not in a normal route. Like I didn't take the SATs or the PSATs. There was no preparatory stuff for that. I went the junior college route and broke all kinds of records in junior college. And and then from there, that's like kind of where the struggle began, because you don't really have a plug-in because you don't fit anywhere.
So so you didn't get into the regular college route because the grades in the school wasn't what you were excelling in,
right? The times for track and field, but when you're not.
But exactly. But so you're excelling in your sport, right? And then the academics not lining up, which I've heard that story a lot. But what I don't hear is then people kept striving. They kind of give up. They're like, well, if I can't get into college, my career's over, right? So you went to junior college, but then you're kicking everyone's ass in junior college because you're like, I really have the times for like a regular big time university,
but not the grades.
So then you're struggling there. So then so is that how you started going in with Team USA, or how did you transition in being able to get to that higher level?
Here's another thing too, is time and place. Like some people just really sleep on time and place. I was at the right track meet at the right day at the right time, and I just ran into the right coach. I happened to just be available to step up to run elite on a 4x4 relay. For people that don't know, everybody runs a lap around a track. That was my event. So I just happened to be available at a track meet where I was doing my own thing as a free agent, just trying to get looks.
Oh my God.
And because I was available, the team that I ended up running for, the elite preparatory team that I ended up running for, one of their girls rolled her ankle during the warm-up. So do we call that synchronicity? Do we call that concept? Like, what do you call that?
So, okay, hold on. I have to pause here because I don't even know this story.
I know you don't.
So this is crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in junior college, you're kicking everyone's ass, but there's not really a future. Like, let's just call it what it is. It's just like, oh, you're just, you're doing junior college shit and like you're, Okay, great. So, and like no one's going to notice you because no one's looking there to recruit or like bring you into Team USA. Okay. Because I understand this through the wrestling world. And there's just that doesn't exist. No. Okay. So then you show up though, and you're having the resilience, the drive to be like, well, this is what I want to do. And I'm just going to make it happen, but you don't really know how. And so you're showing up, you're doing it. And on one of the times, again, climbing the struggle each time to get into the thing as a free agent, which is uncomfortable. It's weird. Not the normal path.
There's no money.
Right. No money, nothing, no support. You're alone. This girl rolls her ankle. You fit perfectly into that space that needed to be filled. And then they're like, oh my God, we love you.
And I ran a great race. Yeah.
Wow.
I ran a great race.
Oh my God.
Super cool.
So yes, right time, right place, but also consistently showing up and being the person that could be present and slotted into any opportunity that would be ready to present itself. Because I feel that many people give up before that moment happens.
Yeah.
But if you just keep showing up and saying yes and like having the resilience, like the biggest part of success is not quitting.
Not quitting.
Like if you just keep going, okay, wow.
Well, how'd you get your black belt? Weren't you a white belt at some, you know what I mean? At some point, like
I literally just kept coming to
you
class.
Just keep going to class.
If you just keep coming, eventually you're going to get better. Yeah.
And it was like a soul directive, which a lot of people don't understand at 23, especially when they've just moved out. And I lived by myself. There's because I didn't go the college route and I don't have the personality to fit to live with other people. It's not I don't play well with others until it is, until it is. Yeah. But I had to live independently. So having all that, it's like, well, no, that was actually a soul directive. Like my soul had me stay appointed to this directive. And so I did. That was it.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that brings us to closer to where you were before at like kind of 25 and go back to that part of the story.
So going back to that, then I just had a successful 5 years of no injury, no nothing.
Wow.
A lot of those coaches that were around me then are probably the fundamental point as to the coach that I am. I know I am a reflection of them. For sure. I've still to this day not run into a coaching structure that coaches, educates, loves, and really does do everything they can to saturate the environment for success. I haven't seen that since I've been a professional athlete.
And they were specifically with runners, or you were in kind of
specifically with runners.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So you're 25, you start kind of you started the more professional part when you were 25, or you're backing off the gas at 20?
I backed off the gas at 28. So for people that don't know, women do peak later in life, physiologically speaking. So I pulled out when I was 28. No injury, no nothing. Had some scares, but great success.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Beautiful. So then
I needed a home.
Yeah. So then what happened? Tell us what happened next.
A beautiful Nigerian man with dreadlocks walked into my gym, and he was a purple belt at the time.
Your lifting gym, right?
At UFC. Yeah. So where I was at the time, and he walked in and happened to be the man I was praying for. And then I chose to introduce myself to jiu-jitsu with him as a catalyst, and have trained with not only people like yourself, human beings like Anna Laura and stuff like that. So my lineage is just a blessing, and it's because I met Bentley. Yeah.
Oh my God. And so you were 28 when you guys met. You were training people at UFC though, right? Yeah. Like, so you were already working as a personal trainer.
I've been a personal trainer for 15 years.
Okay. So when
21.
Okay. So you were personal training while you were getting this running career like trying to keep accelerating that.
And getting my bachelor's degree.
Got it. Okay. So, got it. So you're doing all the things and then you meet Bentley and then you keep personal training. So we've had some years since then, right? Yeah. So walk us through a little bit about, like, I know that when you started competing in jiu-jitsu, we called you Smashly, right? Because you just started killing everybody.
18-0.
And we loved that. We loved it for you. But your career also, like, I've had the privilege of, like, up close and personal, because how many years have we been working together now? Maybe 5?
Almost 7 in September.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That was like right off the cuff.
It's in my notes.
I love it.
It's in my notes.
So I have been able to see you shift just like you have with me a lot in your career and your journey and different pieces of it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about, like, the work you did then compared to the work you do now? Because before, like, very much like traditional. I was going to say traditional physical training. Like, obviously you did some injury rehab. You did some, like, I just want to get fit for the summer. You worked with some athletes. So, and that's how we met, obviously, through, you would see me you used to see me at UFC gym.
This girl would be throwing 135 pounds over her head with just the cutest booty and the worst form. But man, she was safe every time. And
Yes.
And your form wasn't bad. I'm just talking shit.
No, but I was just doing unnecessary
amounts of weight.
Unnecessary things for a jiu-jitsu athlete.
Yes.
And that's a whole other part of my story.
Yes,
but yes. And coming back from wrestling and like going back to jiu-jitsu and healing injuries and all that. But we met while you were still at UFC, and then obviously our relationship continued, but I watched you pivot a lot into the work you do now, which is way more, I would say, like a couple things. And then obviously please explain to them. But like for me, your work feels a lot more specialized now, which it specializes in a couple different things, but more specialized, where I feel like you have different groups of people you do different groups of things with, and you kind of divert your energy very specifically with them, which is really cool to see you like mature into your profession instead of like trying to be everything to everybody, which we have our own experience with that in the coaching realm. And then also exploring new and different, more, I use the word woo just so people understand quickly what I'm talking about. Yeah. But a better word would be like more spiritual aspects of healing and integration, and holistic health and performance. So tell us a little bit about how that's pivoted for you.
Absolutely. So because I was at UFC Gym when we met, and I was coming out of a career and jumping into another sports career, but there was still a bit of like educational longing that I was just wanting to achieve. So soon after I left UFC Gym and began things in a little bit more private way and expand my way in a less corporate elemental area, we'll just say that, I started to really realize my holistic background and who my mentors really are, who my mentors were that helped me to not get injured, who my mentors were in my family, that are holistic DOs and all of those things. So I just started to realize what my environment was encompassed by. So I started to really align with things, because for those people listening that do have a bit of a spiritual directive to how they make their choices in life, I think they would understand, well, that makes sense that you start aligning to things that are attracting themselves to you, or aligning things that you are actually attracting into yourself. Yeah. So I've gone the holistic route, and turns out I've probably always done that. And the only thing that got in the way of that was my own ego, which I don't have a problem with, but that was something that got in the way. So now I do things on a more tailored basis. Not everybody needs to have their tarot card read in order to drop some energetic weight, because every other weight solution has not been helping. So,
or maybe they're so turned off by that at this point in their life that it actually would turn them away from the work that you guys can do together.
Exactly. Right. Where it's like, I've tried everything. And meanwhile, maybe they haven't. Maybe they just don't have that available to them. But before I can introduce that, well, then, there is some esoteric stuff we could do. There is some energetic things that we could do. It's not for everybody, but it's for those people seeking. And being open to people seeking that is how I've been able to branch off into that, where we can have a jiu-jitsu athlete getting ready for a tournament, but we probably do less physical training, and we do more diving into their own energetic realms and their own energetic imbalances and their own energetic peace, and how can we work with that to have success. But you can't just coach that without going through your own shit and having your own shit, and healing your own wounds.
Right. And a lot of different, like, I know a couple of them, but can you tell people listening some of the experiences you've had, or the word I'm looking for is certifications, but more like places you've studied. Like, I know that you've studied a lot with the Chek Institute, or when actually a better question to start with is, holistic health and integrative health is a really big buzz term. It is. And I probably even need to adjust my communication when I'm saying that, because I think a lot of times I use the word holistic, but I'm not really breaking down why I'm saying that word. And especially because it's so popular in like today's media. Can you tell us what you mean by like holistic health or integrative health? Like, when we say that, it can kind of mean a lot also, depending on the topic or the person or the person's issues.
Absolutely.
It can have so many like connotations. So what for the person listening, when you are going to say, oh, and then I studied here and I did this and I did that, like, why did you study those things? What is holistic health?
What is holistic? It's kind of like what you said in a previous episode, where it's like happiness to me and happiness to you. While we're talking about happiness, we could be in complete two different realities.
Private language.
Private language, to give credit there. So holistic health. Thanks, Chris. Holistic health encompasses the whole person. So at the Chek Institute, or where I've gotten my licensing as a practitioner at this point, which you cannot be considered a practitioner until you've practiced for about 3 years. Okay. And that's actually where I'm at. And I notice a lot of professionals,
quote unquote, hashtag
professionals calling themselves practitioners. There's a level of things you have to attain in order to be referenced as a practitioner. And like you said, a lot of confusion lies around that. So you do have a lot of people walking around calling themselves practitioners when there's just a superficial level of interest there.
Well, here's a question for you.
Yeah.
What do people look out for? Because I actually asked Justin Lovato this recently on a podcast, because he does a lot of breath work and different stuff with his clients from a distance, and different work, but similar kind of idea. What do you look out for when somebody is trying to either listen to someone on social, or they're doing services with them, or like, what are the red flags? I know one of them that you and I have talked about a lot, which I'll say now to kind of start it off, is somebody who can't say the words I don't know. Yeah. Somebody who immediately will tell you, I've got all the answers. It's going to take this long. Here's the protocol. Now give me your credit card.
Which leads me to my answer. The moment it sounds too deterministic, you got to get out of there. Anything that encapsulates the whole person shouldn't have a deterministic ending, because if it encapsulates the whole person, then
ever changing, right?
It's ever changing. Then we're no longer talking about this as a journey. We're talking about this as a means to an end.
Right. Because it's an experiment, really. Because as you start to do work with somebody, or as you start to open up the hood, things will change as you go. That's or they should, if you are doing real work. I think they should,
exactly.
Right?
If you're covering real bases, and if your client or you with your practitioner or what have you are actually getting through plateaus, whether they be energetic, whether they be performance, whether they be mental, hormonal, psychosocial, you will feel yourself getting through those thresholds no matter what. So that needs to take your practitioner to another level, and the practitioner should be ready for that type of stuff. So if there's no distinctive design for the person, if your soul tells you this person is very well read, but isn't necessarily experiential, practice, because to know is to know. To experience is actually truly to know. So you want someone that has some level of experience with what it is that you are seeking. Not saying that's always going to be the case. I help plenty of people where I cannot see eye to eye with their experience, but I choose to have more knowing. I choose to experience things with them as best as I can, or put myself in that situation, which won't lead it to be deterministic. And then you definitely want to go with the thing of people that don't know how to say I don't know, that they're, you know, they can say anything, but they're actually a master of none. So
I've had the worst experiences, as you know, people who have injured, like I've gone injured with their work or different things. We're always the people who were like, this is how it's going to be. I know, I've seen this a million times. I know exactly what's going to happen. And like, weren't really open to my curiosity because they knew all.
No. It's like a heart surgeon, right? A heart surgeon can pass. I could be a heart surgeon and pass every type of examination necessary. I could do 100 heart surgeries until my mama rolls in on the wheelchair and I got to do open heart surgery on her. That's a different level of experience that you do not know. So, you know, also this comes down to when you're looking for some type of holistic help, you have to first ask the question, kind of like you have a prefaced question for this podcast. You have to ask the question, like, is this really true? Is what I am dealing with really true? And if you have trouble answering that question, then you have to look out for someone who knows how to help you use your soul. We have too many people walking around professional athletics and just day-to-day life, moms, teachers, whatever, who want somebody else to give them an answer.
Right.
If you feel like this is a type of person, or if you're looking for someone and you just feel like, oh, I don't have to think with this person, they do all of this with me, then you've just rendered your whole life to someone with no accountability.
Right.
And that doesn't
it's
work.
Dangerous too. Like, it may get you a result to a certain extent, but if you get detached from the process because you're really not integrated with what they're telling you to, you're just copying a thing, then you really are like losing a lot of your hands-on feel for the process.
You've given your power of healing to someone else to give you that information. That's not how things work.
Right. And even if they mean really well
too,
of course. Like, or if something worked really well for them. And I think that's where a lot of times we have to take more responsibility as a student or as a client, like, because I am a coach, but first and foremost, I'm a student, like in my own life. And then also from my mentors and people in my life that help me along this journey. And so a big part of my responsibility is like staying curious and being really hands-on with the work instead of being passive and getting lazy and like, oh, just give me a plan.
You have to be a student of your experience. You just do.
And then at the same time, like, if I am that way, this is why the responsibility piece is so important. If I am that way with me, then I know I'm only going to match and work well with practitioners, quote, practitioners, that, or, professionals, whatever you want to call them, with guides, mentors who operate well with that kind of a relationship. And so that's really how I protect myself, is not by making them be different, but just knowing by being the kind of student I want to be, I'm going to match with the right kind of teachers.
Absolutely. And because I'm not going to be a coach forever. Yeah. I'm going to be a student until I die. Yeah. So that just has to be a premise for anyone looking for help, or anyone who is available to give help.
Yeah. So I interrupted you earlier. No, but what's holistic health? Let's tell everybody.
I mean, we should have a forum, just have everybody answer that question.
Yeah.
I think holistic health is an approach to health that is non-deterministic. Mm-hmm. I think holistic health, when you are giving it, so that was an answer for someone who is receiving it. When you are giving some type of holistic health to someone, you have to encompass the whole person.
Okay.
So, for example, there's this concept that we're trained with called surrounding the dragon. Mm-hmm. So that goes with the last point I said of, is it really true when there's an imbalance in your life? I
just want to be super tangible, right? Because everybody listening to this is at a different place with this kind of a conversation. And I feel very connected on this conversation because we talk about it a lot, but I didn't always. So going to be say I come to you and I'm like, what's an example? Hey, no matter how I change my nutrition, my energy levels are really low in the morning. And also I feel like I am over the body fat percentage that I'm comfortable with. Yeah. And I'm training hard and I'm sleeping 8 hours, but I'm just not able to this. Okay. Right. Yeah. So say that's a case that I come to you with. What is the holistic, not answer, because I know it's not, that's exactly what we're talking about, right? Yeah. Not one determined thing, like a one size fits all. Oh, well, you need to stop drinking coffee, or maybe that's part of it for so-and-so, but
and for how long?
Right. Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong. Would the holistic, if we're going to try to define that without a dictionary, right? Would the approach to that, or would a holistic practitioner take that person, being me, for example, and say, okay, great. Here's what you're experiencing. Let's see if that's true. First of all, let's ask more questions. Yeah. That's where we're going to start, right? Ask more questions. Then what would the next step be from there? Is it, let's try adding, subtracting this. Let's look at your relationships. Let's look at your stress levels at work.
So in order to work with someone like myself, I have to look at how all of us, human beings, whether we're business owners, moms, teachers, I'm just going to stay with the same examples.
I know, we've been saying it all day.
I'm just going to stay with the same examples.
We love you, firefighters and policemen out there too. We just
stick with
the vibe ladies here.
We're just exactly. If Chris was here, it'd be different. So at any time as a human being, we're under 6 different modes of stress, whether it be electromagnetic, chemical.
Cheers to the coffee. For those of you guys watching, I got my little Slovakia cup of coffee here.
Chemical, electromagnetic being our phones, thermogenic being the sun. We're under 6 forms of stress at all times. Maybe not all 6 simultaneously, but there are 6.
Those are the factors.
There are 6 factors of stress that affect our physiological body. So I would have to go under, what are your physiological loads? What is creating physiological stress in your body, and how can I use these 6 forms that we are all dealing with to apply to you?
So taking inventory of those 6 and then kind of auditing from there.
And how they apply. Because to just say, I can't sleep, I can't make this weight, I can't this, I can't that. Right. Well, now we just have a bunch of problems with an equal sign at the end of it. But dealing with a whole person doesn't just end with an equal sign. It isn't sleep plus this equals this. We have to look at how your body is dealing with these 6 forms of stress.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does.
Perfect.
So no, it's perfect. so then say you take it a step further and you say, okay, well, I've got because I'm trying to think about the people that are listening, right? We've got a varied amount of experience and interest levels in different topics, right? So say that's something that everyone can get on board with. Sure. Okay, 6 levels of stress. It's science. Anytime there's a science thing, I'm in my mind, I'm speaking just for myself. I'm like, oh, cool. It can be proved. Awesome.
Which I'm big on that. Yes. As much as I'm into spirit, I'm very into this science.
My brain
part.
is show me the Carfax. Yeah. Show me the Carfax. That's why I love Joe Dispenza's work so much. Because it's meditative, spiritual, blah, blah. And then they show me a chart of brainwaves. And I'm like, okay, great. Got it.
And how language affects your DNA. That is a real thing. And that's a real thing in my practice, how your own language affects your DNA. But can we sit and talk about that in a spiritual way? Absolutely.
Right.
Can we sit there and talk about this with your blood panels right next to me? And yes,
Right.
we can.
Right. Well, and that's what I love about holistic, like real holistic practitioners or
Right.
professionals, is that I believe, like, as a client, if I'm trusting you with this level of care, then you should be able to show me the same, for most things, the same thing in science and explain it to me energetically and spiritually
Absolutely.
what's going on. And I think that's
And
where
that's holistic health.
yes, we got
That's holistic
it.
health.
So
Yeah.
it's tying in the science, the bro, the show me the Carfax,
Absolutely.
the guy who's like, talk to me about tarot cards and I will never speak to you again.
Yes.
You want to tie him in with the, like, I've got crystals, I've got my Palo Santo. Like, I had a dream last night about Lemuria. Like,
Yes.
we want to have the same practitioner be able to speak to both levels.
Yes.
Like both, I don't want to say level as in up or down, but just different level of like, this is what I'm resonating with at this time. Okay. So this is so fun. So now it's so fun.
It's the best.
It's so fun to interview like this because we always have like collaborative conversation, but now I'm the professional and I get to
Yes, you have the cup of coffee.
I'm
Yes.
in charge. Thank you very much. I'm gonna have to cut that. Like, I'm in charge.
No,
That's gonna be real. That's gonna be real. Okay, so so for the jiu-jitsu athlete who is listening to this, how the fuck do we actually apply
Use this
holistic health to jiu-jitsu for the person who is like, look, that stuff's great and all, but I only want to do what's going to help me actually be best. And also, like, I'm a dad and I'm a husband and I have to go to work and this and that. And I don't have time to like sit around and talk about all my feelings, nor do I even think that that's helpful for me at this time. So if that's the case, then how do I perform? Let's go into the performance mode. How do I perform optimally? Because the questions that I get a lot of the time are like, what supplements do I take? What's the perfect time amount to train in a week? All those things. And yes, like, again, if you want to look at holistic health, this is about integrating both. There is like validity to that.
Of course.
But how does somebody
Because how many jiu-jitsu athletes do breath work and meditate? So you're open to it.
Right.
You know, yeah.
Right. And we have enough like influencers in jiu-jitsu that talk about all of that. So like y'all have seen it.
Yeah.
So for the jiu-jitsu athlete that is thinking about it this way, but like the caveat is what they are currently doing is not working, right? What are some of the first tangible things? Like, let's really simplify it down. Like, what are some really tangible things, whether it is supplements or maybe it's a breath practice or like, what are some of those things? Or maybe it's like when you eat before, how early before training, like what comes to mind with when you think about the clients that you speak to that kind of fall into this realm, that you can open up some of this work to them with?
Well, I like to speak to the male and the female population a little differently. So you can't help data analytics. And I have so many populations of people that I train, males at this age and females at this age. Yeah. So I could put that together and just keep it more general or just really quickly go into like how I would address that for a male and how I would
do a little bit of both. That'll be helpful.
I agree. So for my guys, my experience is my guys, we all overtrain. My guys really overtrain. Right. So because I look at that as a lessening of kindness to the self in a simplified way. In a simplified way, it isn't the kindest thing for a gentleman to overtrain because of this goal. Because there we have that problem and that equation again of train hard, don't sleep, do this, take this supplement, which is usually a synthetic piece of trash, and equal ADCC champion. Enter in world champ. Right. So that's not.
And then most of the time they don't get the thing at the end anyway, because only 1 out of 187 goddamn people are gonna even get the thing. Right. And so then they're left with, they did all of this thing to get the thing that they didn't get. And now it's like, well, this is my life.
When it's just sacrifice over and over and over.
And is it worth it if you get the thing or not the thing? And then, because either way, whether you get the thing or not, which from being a professional athlete, you still lived your life how you lived it. So you better, whether you get the thing or not, because you can't actually control that, you better actually like the life you're living. Yeah. So if you're constantly in that sacrificial mode, what are you dealing? What are you telling them?
Well, it's just, so here's how right brain people, left brain people, you know what I mean? Male, female. Got you. So with my gentlemen, you just got to stay a little bit more linear. So my main thing to them is, you can text your girlfriend. You can text DoorDash. You can text all these. You cannot text your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands have no mode of telling you, excuse me, sir, with our 8 a.m., with your 8 a.m. black fucking coffee.
Yeah.
And then competition class. I'm not calling anybody out here. I can't help who I train.
I know all of them.
With your
all of them.
8 a.m. fucking black coffee, your competition class, and then your 12:30 cup of coffee, and then your 3 p.m. cup of coffee, and then your 6 p.m. training, your 7 p.m. lesson. What is the message you're
And
doing?
maybe like a protein bar.
Oh, no.
Like one time in there, like maybe one of those like maxed out, like colossal, I don't want to call any brands out, but like.
We don't. Or
maybe
Quest or any of
one protein bar and then like slept for 5 hours and
if
also.
You slept, right. So then what is the message? Because I would go as far as to argue with anyone to wonder, what does that message say to your glands and organs? What does that say to your physiology? Well, it doesn't scream love and it doesn't scream champion. It just doesn't.
And see, that's where I feel the plug-in around athletes, because when you say doesn't scream love, I'm like, yeah, but a lot of people don't hear that. They're like, it doesn't matter if I love love. I'm just trying to win a trophy. But if you say it doesn't scream champion, if you kind of zoom out and say, well, okay, it depends on different people's goals. But if your goal is to be a champion, then I would view that as you actually want to feel like a champion every day, rather than only living in this like lack and sacrificial space. And then imagining, hoping, and I would also say it's delusional that on the day of the tournament, you're going to show up as a champion.
Correct.
Like,
because it's illusory.
Yes.
Because the key component there is the self-love that you have for yourself and your own hero's journey for yourself. So you are living in an illusory world because the image that you are casting out, in fact, is not what you're aligning with the result. Those things don't go together. Chemically, biochemically, we can go any direction with that.
Yeah.
So that's for my guys. The same thing could be used for girls too. I've probably said the same thing to you and folks like Shelby Murphy. Like, what is the message that you are receiving from this? Because you can't text your liver, you can't text your adrenal glands.
Well, so how do we start giving like, what are some of the first steps? Say a guy in that category. What are some of the first steps if they're, again, like, I like the texting analogy because it's super clear. Yeah. So if you were to be able to speak to your organs, your glands more kindly, and again, I'm just going to like break it down and even to more like the bro world. Like,
please,
if you were to start treating your body better so it performs better for you.
Better.
If the only thing you're worried about here is performance, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. We want to speak to you too. And also I've been there many times myself. So if only thing is you're worried about is performance, whether you're in that language or you are in the language of like, I want to energetically treat my body better. I want to communicate better to it. And really because you're asking a lot of it, like you're asking of your body so much, whether you're male, female, trying to win the world, trying to, run 3 businesses at once, whatever it is, you're asking a lot of your body. So whether you're speaking to it in the way that we're talking about, or you're just treating it better to get optimal results, what are some of the key things that you would suggest people add in or subtract if they are not doing already, that are like, literally, I could take this list and maybe not do it perfectly, but in the next 60 days, I could have like a pretty good plan for myself to start getting better?
What a beautiful question. So I think sleep hygiene, which just not a lot of people understand that. It isn't just as simple as, hey, get to sleep so you can get to competition training. Yeah. If it were that simple, I would still be competing. If it were that simple, things would be more successful.
Well, things like sleeping with your phone not right next to your head.
Yeah. So just sleep hygiene. Hey, just get the Wi-Fi signal away from you. You don't want to talk about EMFs? No problem. Why don't we just talk about what your brain waves do? You need your brain waves for recovery, especially if you're healing after 3 training segments in one day. Where do you think the healing things come from?
Just put the phone on the floor by the door.
Phone on the floor.
Like, it doesn't have to be in the kitchen or dramatic, but like just put it on the ground. Like,
why do we need anything interrupting our waves, for recovery, sleep hygiene. Okay, well, let's say in the first 30 days, you're able to turn off your Wi-Fi and you actually realize I'm going to sleep with my phone in the next room. Well, then you still have 30 days on that goal we just set. So then, well, what's the next thing? Can you try to get to bed by 10:30? Well, yeah, but why? Because I have to do this and this and this and get ready for my meeting. So I get to bed at 12:30. Okay, we'll get to bed at 10:30 because from 10:30 to 2, certain things happen within your brain waves to create a certain level of recovery. From 2 to 6, certain other things happen with your brain waves for a certain type of recovery. Can you go to bed at 10:30 and wake up at 6? A lot of my police officers who do jujitsu have that problem, but if it's a point of conversation, you can try.
Or they try to get as close as they can.
If you can do 3 times a week of legit sleep hygiene, you're still doing better.
That was such a genius thing you said.
You're still doing better than zero.
So that is so good, because sometimes for me, like in my mind, I'm like, well, the goal is I need to be in bed by this time, say 10. bed by 10 because that means I'll probably fall asleep by like 10:30 and be solidly asleep, and then wake up at 6 or 6:30, and like that's in my mind what works. But then I love the idea of being like, okay, well, what if you have to do some negotiations?
Right.
Because we do have to negotiate.
Absolutely.
Right. So say you are someone with I know many people listening to this podcast are like, would classify themselves as like high achievers, lots of goals. They don't just do one job. Like they do a lot of stuff. And also if you have a simpler version of that, this is not a pet. I'm not trying to put that on a pedestal.
No, fair.
Like
fair.
if you have a simpler version, you are probably in a healthier spot, and good for you. Good job.
Good for you.
But if you're not, and you're someone who struggles with this like I do, I have to tell myself like, okay, on the nights that I know that I'm going to have a harder time getting to bed early, I negotiate, because I'm like, okay, well, those are the nights that instead of doing, like, this is literally the math I do in my head. Okay, if I have to do 2 preps for 2 meetings, so I'll use the example that you gave. Instead of doing one on Tuesday night and one on Wednesday night, and then neither of those nights I get good sleep, I may do both on Tuesday night, because then I don't have to get in work mode 2 nights in a row. So I bang it out. Maybe it takes me 45 minutes instead of 30 and 30. Then Tuesday night, my sleep's not as great, but Wednesday, I know I can get to bed right, like when I need to. And so it's true. Like you don't need to, people get so obsessed with like morning routines and this and that, and it has to be perfect every time. And it's like, well, sometimes my morning is going to be 2 hours and I'm like, oh, this is delicious and wonderful, and I got everything. Other times, like
I don't even get outside.
I have to cut back on my morning routine so that I can get more sleep, and that's a fair trade-off. And then my 30 minutes that I have get condensed, and that's the best I could do that day. But it's in my experience, it's in the trying. Yeah. It's in the striving. It's in the not.
Because that's the message. Yes. When you're trying, what's the message now?
That's so good.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like the
now
universe
I'm telling my body.
Now, exactly.
I love you. I care for you. I'm doing my best for you, truthfully. And like, for me,
how does your DNA receive that?
And when it's sincere.
Yeah.
In the sincerity of it, I find is when the magic happens for me, because honestly, oh my gosh, this is so funny, because you posted something not too long ago about like, you realized you didn't have a snack and you didn't want to be in that mode where you were like, no, this is so true. Like you didn't want to tell yourself like, oh, I have to eat this thing or else you're like, wait, I can survive. Now, would it have been optimal for you to have your snack? For sure. So for me, when I go into the sleep thing, I know it's optimal for me to get like 8.5 to 9 hours of sleep. I know I feel best with that.
Sure.
But when I'm going to know that I'm going to get 6.5, 7, which I really try not to do, but occasionally happens, I have the conversation with myself. Like literally I speak to myself, and this is more for people who are open to this kind of thing, but in my experience, it works really well. I'm going to feel so rested. My intention for this sleep is I'm going to get deeper, even deeper sleep than what I normally do when I go to bed. Like that kind of conversation. Then man, like I commit to, no matter how I feel when I wake up in 6.5 hours, which I expect it to be good. But even if it's not, I am setting the intention that when I get up, I'm going to feel good and I'm going to act as if, and I'm going to go along, instead of the conversation that many of us have experienced of like, I didn't do a good job. Now tomorrow's going to suck, and that meeting's not going to go. I'm not going to make the sale. And then
I'm just not rested.
Like, yes,
so
exactly.
now you remove yourself from your experience, you know, and then what's that signal giving off? Yeah. So, and that actually goes into how I converse more with my gals about things like that. It's, well, where's your intention? You know, what if you just set certain intentions? It doesn't mean you have to get up an hour early to write out this whole check of to-do list, because now you've just projected yourself far more into the masculine. Now you're still doing, you're still not receiving from yourself. Setting intentions, I think, is very healthy, especially for women, because any of us could be guilty of doing a million things at 1 second, you know, and that is just something that every human does, but we could probably all understand the archetype of person that does that more. And I do have conversations about that more with women, especially women in jiu-jitsu, let alone the women in jiu-jitsu that are coaches. You know what I mean? Where you have to walk a very thin line between self-love and the love that you have for your craft. So intentions are the best way to stay healthy at a superficial level for women grapplers.
Especially that's so good, because I also reminds you when you were saying like the love you have for yourself and the love you have for your craft, but also the love you have for others. Because for the women listening, like this is a whole other topic. I don't want to spend too much time here because I want to ask you something else about health, but it's really important, in my experience, for women to take a step back and just notice how inclined we are to take care of everybody around us.
Absolutely.
And to step out of our own needs and to caretake in ways that are physical and easy to recognize, but also energetically. Like, how do I quiet myself so that you're comfortable? Correct. How do I over apologize? How do I, like, there is so many examples of
how do I deal with being how do I get comfortable with being uncomfortable? Well, that's great in certain areas. You don't need to be qualified in being comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, it is okay to understand that you're uncomfortable and ask yourself, well, why?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's
we want
okay.
to honor the discomfort.
Correct.
There are times where discomfort comes up, and then the thing is in the noticing, right? It's also in the sincere question asking. If I'm uncomfortable, this is going a little bit intuition, but it also relates back to like training, where if I'm noticing discomfort, there's nothing, I don't want to label right or wrong, either pushing through or stopping, because the truth is that it's so dependent on the scenario.
Yeah.
But for me, it's in the asking of the question. Hey, okay, this is uncomfortable. What's going on here? Why? Is this something I want to continue? Is this something I want to stop? And growing up as somebody who I know, again, same similarities with us and so many people listening, and also men too. You don't want to just like throw men out of the conversation here.
No.
But human beings in general, like when we have discomfort come up, many of us are wired to just push through,
right?
No matter what, because it's like achieve more, be successful, do this, make sure everyone thinks I'm shiny and important and smart and special and cool and all of these things. And we don't ask the question of why. Now, there have been times in my life where that has really carried me through and helped me achieve things that were really important to me. But there's also been times where I've driven myself into the ground, whether that was physically or emotionally.
Absolutely.
And now I feel really blessed to have more awareness to ask the question, so that can I use my strength? And I wouldn't even want to say masculine energy, because it is a lot of like the divine feminine strength in me, like the warrior, like the feminine warrior that lives in me, of like, can I push through?
Yeah.
Can I persevere? Again, whether it's like resilience emotionally or physically, and it helps me become the woman that I want to be. But there are also many times where, because I asked that question now, I'm able to treat myself, going back to what we're telling ourselves, treat myself with more love, more kindness, more compassion.
And integrity, which is great for males or females. Like if males don't want to get carried away into the self-love department because of the verbal part of that, then I would understand that expression or lack of expression. But then, what would take anybody out of integrity with themselves? Because in order for you to understand what takes you out of integrity with yourself, you have to understand what integrity is to you.
Right.
So that's part of my practice as well. It's like we need to look at integrity as not just the dictionary term, but what pulls you out of integrity with yourself. And if you don't know what that means, then you probably don't have a founded understanding of what your level of integrity is with how you treat yourself.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's so good. And to give you guys like a takeaway from that to practice, one of the most powerful, profound practices that you can do, that I can do. And I always like to switch my language to I, because I'm like, I don't know if it's going to work for you. Like, honestly, like I just know what works for me. But I want to share it in case that it does. Like literally something that will take me 5-6 minutes. I mean, longer if you really want to get in there. But I will sit down and I'll put on music or not, or whatever. I'll do it in my car on my notes app or in my iMessages to myself, which I do all the time, which is so funny. And I literally will write down, like, ask the question, what does integrity mean to me? What does it mean for me to live within my values? What are
my values?
My values. Yeah. Because integrity means a lot of things to a lot of people.
Like happiness.
Yes. And exactly. So then going back into the experience of like, this is kind of uncomfortable. Let me stop and ask why and what's going on. Doing that like allows me to do two things. One, the integrity of persevering when I know it's for the sake of staying in my values feels so much better than just doing it because I have blinders on and I just persevere and that's what I do.
Yeah.
There's an empowerment in that. It feels so delicious and
then that's part of your values too.
Amazing.
That's part of your values too. It's just at what point does that value system now pull me off the rails of integrity, right?
Right. And so exactly. So it's like when you can ask the question of like, why is this uncomfortable? And then you push through anyway. It should feel good to keep pushing. It shouldn't feel like, oh, this sucks so bad. Like it should, for me, feel good to then persevere, even if the perseverance is uncomfortable.
Correct.
But when I pull back, it gives the opportunity to keep myself safe. It gives the opportunity to detach from situations or people or conversations,
to
or
take a wider view, to enhance your perspective, to enhance the lens through which you're seeing a situation or participating in an experience too. So
and then going back into my real life, like what does that actually look like? I mean, if you just want to look at a career, for example, right? How many times, like for myself, have I kept going with a project or a business partnership or some kind of endeavor that I knew was uncomfortable. And then I look back later, I'm like, why did I stay in that for
that?
so long? Like, it's not that I didn't want to have the experiment, but I kind of knew the first 2 months that like, and I could have pivoted then, but I didn't listen to
everybody
the uncomfortability.
Needs practice with their intuition too.
Right.
Like you have to get your reps in. I know my 6-pack didn't just get there because I have my father's genetics and I ran track professionally. I know that any level of my muscle definition came through repetition.
Right.
You know, however, skill is the mother of repetition. So how else could you have skill?
Have to practice. Well, and that's why with this conversation, it's so, you know, like I love that this can speak to different kinds of people because it can speak to the spiritual, the woo, the people who like crystals. Like that's great. I don't like mean to say that to demean because I am one. Like I am that 1000%. But it just helps you understand what I'm saying really quickly. So
but I'm also a nerd and I can dive into any level of scientific literature that you would like. So, at any time.
But it's great because it speaks to like, okay, so say there's a dude who's listening and like what he really cares about is like financial abundance and like securing things for his family and winning tournaments and all these things. And those are beautiful, beautiful focuses to have. Okay, this thing about listening to your intuition and backing off when things are uncomfortable and asking the question of, is this right? Instead of just being bullheaded, like, I just get it done no matter what because that is my go-to. This will save you money.
Yeah.
It will save you time. It will save you energy. It will save your relationships.
And you'll still get laid by your wife. Because let's not talk about adrenal fatigue and how that can definitely put a deficit to the male phallus if you keep tapping into your adrenal glands. So let's you know, we're not talking to 8th graders here. So there is a lot at risk for anybody who's just overdriving. And that's also holistic health. What are your values? What does integrity mean to you? What does happiness mean to you? What I've literally sat in front of any number of people and I've been like, I'd like to know where you derive your happiness. And the number of people that have looked me in my face and been like, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't. And then so how are you supposed to sit and say, I want my day to look like this. I want my life to look like this. If you don't know what things lead to your happiness.
That's right.
And so then you can't design your life.
No.
And we're meant to design our life. Yes. And surrender when things change.
And allow. And receive. Yeah.
So, okay. So I know that we're going to finish up quickly, but I want to give a few more takeaways to that example of the person who knows they want to make some changes, but they don't know what they are. So we talked about sleep hygiene, and that's a great one. We talked a little bit about the Wi-Fi and the phones.
Sure.
What are some other, like, give like 3 more things that you're like, I noticed this a lot, and this might be something that you need, that you could experiment with changing.
I definitely have to go the supplemental route there. Just so everybody understands, like I'm not a dietitian, I'm not a nutritionist, and thank God. Because I'm not a programmed human being. So I have to go down the route of supplements because that's just such a large umbrella for people who are athletes at any level. So supplements are 2 things. They're for anybody. They're great ways for you to challenge and look into and innovate how you use your own directive to answer your own questions. If you realize that you're taking a bunch of supplements because someone said it's good, but you have not asked any questions about it, you're just trying something because someone referred something, I would be very cautious of something like that, because then you haven't asked yourself, is this something that is good for me? And everybody has that superhuman. If you just give yourself a second to ask, is this good for me? So with any level, even if it's something that I prescribe, even if it's something that I suggest, ask yourself, is this something that I need? Which then in itself allows you to use your soul directive a little bit more in your own intuition, which every human being has anyway. And you can just use that with your supplementation. But supplementation is a wide thing to look at. And there are certain things that I would definitely bullet point as avoid. And there are definitely some bullet points that I would say maybe include, you know?
What would be like, I know some of the ones that you've referred to me before, like I thought about you this morning because every morning in the last like couple months, one thing that's really worked for me is I do the Calm Magnesium and the Amazing Grass, which you introduced me to so many years ago.
Yeah, and it's so great for Emma too.
I love it. Yeah, so I do Magnesium and Amazing Grass as my green supplement, and I feel really, really good about those too. So what are like,
and why? Why do you feel good? Because your gut feels good, because you feel good, because you're, I don't mean to answer for you, but that's probably why you feel good, sweetheart, and that you're someone who knows when they don't feel good.
Well, that's the thing is I only take things, well, I try to do my best with only taking things that I really feel a difference if I take them or not.
There you go.
And so then again, it's more like checking in with me. Like, what do I actually want to take? Like, where do I want to spend my money? And where do I also, like, not everyone wants to take 15. I don't want to take 15 supplements.
I don't want anyone to take supplements. I mean, have 15, have 50. You don't need to take them every day, which is another thing, another bullet point. Like if you are someone that supplements and you just have a few things at home like I have, or if you use a top 10 for any number of reasons, I wouldn't just take the same thing every day.
What are like 3 or 4 things that you would recommend to somebody who's kind of your classic, not like necessarily professional athlete, but classic jujitsu, avid exerciser, but they have a full life. Maybe their sleeping is like, but sometimes good. Like that kind of your average client that you work with.
So I'll just go with some main bullet points, and I'm happy to go into why, but just collagen. You need collagen. A secondary one that I would include is a charged particle, such as magnesium. That doesn't cover all the charged particles that you need for your immune system and all of that, but everybody needs magnesium for any number of reasons. It's a catalyzer for all of the electrical components that go on in your body. So magnesium, vitamin D, collagen, and get a bone broth protein in there. It's good for your gut biome. So for the bone broth protein, if you're going to have a protein powder, I would suggest a bone broth protein. You could have anything that you want, but just please don't make it whey. Please don't make it
You saw she looked in the camera to say that. Don't make it whey.
And if you really want to know why, it has nothing to do with me being a holistic hippie.
She said, DM me. You know?
Just slide in there if you want to. Please. I'm happy to go into why. But
call me. I'll tell you all about whey.
All about it. And it's not an optimal thing. It's just something that forges the question of, wait, why am I taking this? And not enough people ask why.
I just know for me, like I've listened to you tell me the science behind it, which is always fascinating. But then going back to my own personal experiences, even when I've taken like the grass-fed, the really high quality brands, maybe they work for some people, and like fair. Sure. But for me, I always have digestive issues. I always feel bloated. And it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Like, again, maybe for some people it works really well, but I just find that other stuff works better for me.
I just hope that this information makes people ask more questions. Just ask more questions. Hopefully those questions are directed to me or anyone that anybody trusts, where you can get a full-fledged and full-bodied, robust answer. But whey protein is just not anything that anyone should be taking, let alone any basic client of mine. So charged particles, they help. Anything that protects your gut biome, or say you don't want to get too deep in the gut biome, say it's an investment for you. Well, then just your gut lining, and just have a coconut oil laying around. Green powder, a coconut oil laying around.
Would that be like, would the coconut oil be like you're cooking with it, you throw it in your smoothie, your coffee, or just kind of any way you want to use it?
Say you're someone that takes pharmaceuticals because you just have to. Say you have to for your cholesterol. Say you have to for your blood pressure. But you're also, and I coach these people, but you're also someone that does jujitsu and is a mother and what have you. Well, if you have to take pharmaceuticals, but you also enjoy coffee, might as well protect your gut lining. Get a spoonful of that down. So it's just little things that most people probably have in their cupboard anyway. Yeah. Most people shop at places like Costco that can get a very basic type of magnesium. There's tiers to everything that you can get. Yeah. Is it best to just supplement with things that you need that we will not get from our food? Those are the items.
I see. And then everything else trying to get a lot of different, like the classic, like try to get as many colors and different categories of vegetables and fruits and
a green powder. None of us eat enough fruits and vegetables. And quite frankly, with agriculture these days, it's just hard. It's hard to believe in our food all of the time. And it's impossible now to think that you'll get all of your supplemental needs through food.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things about like holistic and integrative health that I really appreciate about like our conversations, what I've learned from you is sometimes it can be really overwhelming to listen to holistic health practitioners talk about the importance of like where you get your meat and this and that and your water and like. And the reason why is because it is very difficult to do all of it, quote unquote, perfect, as if there was a perfect anyway. But for me, the way I try to go about things that works is I control a lot of the things I can control. Exactly. So I try to get the things I can. Yeah. But then when I go out on a date night and Chris like books reservations somewhere nice, I'm not going to run up and be like, hey,
are you guys using
from? No, like, and also.
Was this pasture raised?
Right.
Like, and you also have to approach what you do with love too. Yes. Like if all you can afford is a a magnesium glycinate that they sell wherever and all you can afford is $8.99. I would rather you get that supplement and pray over it and give it gratitude so that you can actually, your DNA can receive it with that right intention, as opposed to making an investment in a $50 magnesium product if you're just not someone that can do that. I would rather that than the excuse being it's not a financial option for me.
When that brings me back to like, do what you can with what you have. You
Certainly.
know? Like if I go to a grocery store to get steak or meat or chicken, whatever, like if I'm trying to get something, would it be better to have it from a local farm? For sure. But I don't always, financially, like not everyone has access to that, but also depending on where you live. And also sometimes,
I have clients in Detroit. Where are the farmers markets in Detroit? Like, where?
Man, sometimes I just ran out of food and it's the end of the week and I'm going to go to Ralph's. Like, I'm sorry, but I'm going to Ralph's. I'm on Walmart. Like whatever it is, like you have to do to make it work. Like I think it's really easy to get overwhelmed by health and fitness and wellness.
Even for me, I get caught up in those cycles all the time. And I'm like, wait a second. Now this is stepping me outside of the realm of practicality.
And then it's not supporting you anyway, energetically, your lifestyle, your performance, any of that. So, okay. So to finish up, I have one more question and then, I'm going to ask you again what it means to have a grip on your life. Perfect. And then we're going to have to come back for part 2 because there's so much stuff to cover. Beautiful. We didn't even tap into strength conditioning or injury recovery or anything like that. But okay. So last thing that everyone needs to know, including me drinking it right now, tell us a little bit about caffeine, and not in the way that's like, this is perfect and everyone, not that you would do this, but just so everyone listening, like there's not one perfect right way to do it. But for my guys and gals who are drinking 3-4 plus cups of coffee a day, or maybe 1 or 2 cups of coffee, and then they have an energy drink, like, which, is not uncommon. It's very, very common. What would be some steps? Because you're not going to look at that person and be like, done, no more caffeine for you. Because first of all, they're not going to do it. Okay. So, which we know. So
and whether it's alcoholism or smoking or coffee, you never remove anyone's routine. That is the most unhealthy thing to do. You just don't remove someone completely from their routine. That routine could be what's keeping them alive.
So with coffee,
coffee keeps me alive.
If my routine is to, have the equivalent of like 8 cups of coffee a day, which if you're drinking like Monster drinks or you're close. So which again, no shade. I've had them before. Yeah. This is not like a judge. This is a judgment free. Well, maybe not judgment free. No, I'm just kidding. This is a lower judgment zone. Yeah. No. So what would be some steps to take that are actually something that someone could be like, okay, I could do that. I could try that.
I like steps for me as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, as a holistic health practitioner. I need informed decisions. I'm fine to make decisions on the whim. I'm an Aries. Let's fucking go. No problem. But I do need evidence. Yeah. So I love that. I need evidence. I wanted to be a lawyer when I was 8 years old, and now we wonder why. But anyway, some evidence as to why you would want to have a healthy relationship with coffee would be coffee has a half-life of 8 hours. So what you're drinking there is about 35 milligrams. You're going to have 15 milligrams still left in your body at 8 hours after consuming that. So where you think you're intaking 1, think again. In 8 hours, you're still going to have half of that coffee left. I see. Just period. Right. And then, which is why it really matters how late in the day you're drinking coffee. Absolutely. Like normally, just to credit myself, I normally don't drink coffee past like 2:00, but it's about to be 5:00, and this got started a long time ago. So that's okay. I've been nursing this. That's okay. That's okay. Exactly. That's fine. So I have a very loving relationship with coffee until I feel like I need it. The moment I feel like I need this, or before I go to this, I need my coffee, I have to examine where my relationship is with coffee that week. Okay. And I go through this often, because for me to be dependent on something, it does happen. I have to observe it. And I would encourage anyone to observe what is your relationship with what you think you need so many times a day. Take your power back a little. Take your power back a little bit and understand if you are anybody dealing with weight cutting, with weight loss, with emotional weight staying on your body. Caffeine is just not a catalyst to a healthy life of longevity when you're just trying to take it in to keep you present.
Especially considering like the way our hormonal cycles, right? Like men and women, when we're adding in tons of caffeine to that.
How about your cortisol?
Yeah.
Well,
that's what I mean. Yeah. Like the way that our chemistry moves throughout the day in a cycle, when we're jumping on it with caffeine all the time, like we can't function naturally and properly.
Yeah.
Right?
And caffeine's an ergonomic. So it's plant medicine. So we have to be careful with our relationship to it. Mm-hmm. However, that half-life conversation usually allows people to make a bit of a better choice.
So would something that someone could try, like say the guy or the girl who drinks a cup in the morning, drinks a cup in the afternoon, and then maybe has like a Celsius or something before they train, right? That's like, okay, they're having maybe like, what is that, 4 cups of coffee worth or 2.5, whatever, 3 or so. Would the conversation maybe start with, okay, well, that last thing you're having, you're drinking that at 4 or 5 o'clock. And that means that by the time you go to sleep, so would it be switching that to like a matcha or switching that to green tea? Or maybe they're willing to take that out completely. Or maybe you're willing to take out the
afternoon,
the second cup of coffee. So you have your morning, you take out your second, and then maybe you have, your Celsius or whatever you want to have before training. Like, is that the kind of step you would take someone through as a client?
Absolutely. And when I'm looking to balance something like an energy drink over coffee, my job immediately becomes, how do we separate from that can? How do we separate from that? Because if I'm going to have a necessary evil, which are necessary, I would rather go with the caffeine and be able to, like, you can't talk about how Celsius or something like that could be elevated to go into your body and be more optimal. Caffeine, we can have all kinds of conversations about how to optimize the caffeine we're using. If you just need to have 3 a day, because maybe right now you can't even afford to talk to me about, no, I cannot have less than 3 a day. Then we need to get rid of that, what's in that can.
Right. So keep it coffee or matcha or
green tea.
And do what you need to do.
Yeah,
And then do that for a week consistently and then see how you're feeling and then maybe make a new shift in another 2 weeks or something.
Give everything at least 7 days, because your nervous system is still going to take 21 to write a new nervous system response to it anyway. So everything is worth 7 days, whether it's a date, whether it's a guy, whether it's a girl, whether it's a jiu-jitsu intro or whether it's coffee. Everything requires at least 7 days.
Perfect. Oh my gosh. I hate that we're going to cut it here, but we're going to do a part 2. Okay. So very last thing, maybe it changed, maybe it didn't. What does it mean to you to have a grip on your life?
I'm going to go with, yet again, just softness. Softness. I just can't arrive to everything with the same energy, but when I arrive to everything with softness, I just simply have a better grip.
And I think that resonates with me so much, because you and I both can go into overdrive in our
too easy. I live there.
Energy.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not to demonize the masculine. I love the masculine. I need it. It's so important. But because that is so natural, I have to put more intention on the softness. And I'm kind of echoing what you've told me before of like, maybe some people actually have the opposite, where they need to turn their masculine up a little bit more. But for you and I know that we relate in that of like, if I focus more on softness, then my masculine's going to shine through anyway.
Yeah.
I have no risk of like only being in the soft.
No.
So if I focus more on softness, that actually kind of brings me more back to baseline.
Balance.
Yeah. So that's so good. Oh, Ashley, thank you so much. I love you so much. I'm only not going to hug you because I don't want to mess up my mic.
Neither do I, girl.
But I'll hug you after. Man, I love you so much. I'm so appreciative of your time and our relationship and your expertise and just what you have to share with everybody listening.
Same. And everything you're doing for everyone. Like we are all blessed to be part of your experience as listeners or as guests. And I love you.
So sweet. I love you so much. And man, guys, if you got any value from this, which I know you did, I don't even know why I have to say that. There's a couple things. One, you can follow Ashley on Instagram. She posts a ton of informational content that is like really great in her stories and on her feed posts. And she is also open to having like coaching conversations there. If you're interested in working with her, she does a lot of work with people from a distance. Obviously, if you're local, then she does work with people in person too. But if you guys are not, she does a lot of distance client work. And I've actually referred a ton of people to her that I am so happy I have the opportunity to do, because I know that they have such great results and such great experiences and have worked with her for multiple years now, which is just like, if someone works with someone, if I refer someone to someone else and they work with them for multiple years, that is such a gift to me, because I feel like I was able to make a great connection. So definitely reach out to her if you're interested in any of this kind of work. So that's number one. Number two, and we'll link everything in the show notes so you guys can check out her Instagram and stuff. The second thing, oh my gosh, if I can speak and not choke on my coffee. Sorry if I just yelled in your ear if you have headphones in. Second thing, as you guys know, we don't do ads on the podcast. So the only thing I ask is that you share the podcast, share the love, show the love. You guys can copy the link and send it to somebody. That's a great way to help out the podcast, but you can also share it on your story. You can send it in the group chat. Any way that you guys can share the podcast. I just do this for fun. I don't make any money off of it. It's just what I love to do. And so if you guys can help share and support the podcast, it really, really, really means a lot to me, because it means as the podcast grows that I can keep making this a priority in my life, which is really something that I would love to do. So I appreciate the support as always. And make sure you guys stay tuned. We're going to have a Q&A episode pretty close and soon here. So stay plugged into the Instagram, because I'm going to do a Q&A thing where you can pop your questions. But if you missed that, or if you just have a question now that's coming up, if you're on Spotify, there's a Q&A thing at the bottom of the screen that you can click on and submit your question there. Or if you're on YouTube or Apple, you can leave it in the comments or as a review, and I will choose Q&A questions from there. Look, I got it all. I didn't even mess up.
No,
I got it all in there.
Actually helpful.
I got it all in there. So comments, reviews, rates, love all that so much in the subscriptions and stuff. It really means a lot to the podcast, guys. We're a new podcast. I'm smaller in this realm and just getting started. So my OGs around here that are listening to this in 2023, you guys are amazing. And I so appreciate your time and attention. Never goes unappreciated by me. So I'm so happy you're here. And Ashley, I'm so happy you're here.
Me too, babe.
We'll be back soon, guys. Make sure you stay tuned in, subscribe, all that stuff, so you get the next notification. And until then, keep living well, and I'll see you soon.